We say goodbye to the next section, and we say goodbye to it with the assignment we have to complete. Actually, you have to complete it. And this is very important that you do it right now. Because this assignment is not intended to check what you have learned so far, but above all to show you if you learned in a good way. And this is very important at this stage, because even if something goes wrong, you will be able to correct it quickly. And when you take up the challenge in the end based on this assignment, I will tell you if your learning is going in the right direction and what you should pay attention to. But let's move on to what needs to be done. What you can see on your monitor right now is the to-do list of 8 tasks for our assignment, and on the right side of the screen you can see the final effect. So your job is to create a website that will look more or less like this, and you'll create it basing on those 8 tasks of our assignment. This project is not pretty or complicated, but it requires some of the knowledge and skills to complete it. Now let's take a look of what needs to be done. The first task. Create an index.html file in Visual Studio Code and the document structure in it. The document has to be in English and has to be entitled Day 7-8 Assignment. Create a style tag in head to include the styles. So we have to open our Visual Studio Code, create a basic structure, check if the language is English, change the title of our document, and create a style tag in our head tag to be able to put some styles in our document. Now the second task. Place 2 div elements in your document, each with a p element inside with some sample text, could be lorem ipsum. Give each of the divs a separate class with any name. Remember that the class name cannot start with a digit. Use the Emmet shortcuts for this. So then we need to go to our body tag, create 2 div tags inside it. In each div tag there's supposed to be a p tag. We should place some text in the p tag. It could be lorem ipsum. We should give our divs a separate classes with any names. Let's remember that a class name is not supposed to start with a digit. And what we should do is to use some kind of an Emmet shortcut while creating our elements. The third task is set the first div's background color to red and the second div's to blue using an RGB based value for red and a hexadecimal value for blue. So as you can see in our project preview, our first div element has red background, our second div has blue background, but we can't use keywords red and blue to specify these colors, but we have to use the RGB function in the first div and a hex number in the second div. Now the fourth task. Make the first div 50% of the width of the browser window and the second div 20% of the height of the browser window. So again, as you can see at our projects preview, we should only set the width property to the first div without height. And remember that it's supposed to be 50% but of the browser window and not of the parent element. That's important. With the second div, we are not supposed to set its width, but we are supposed to set its height. And again, its height is supposed to have 20%, not its parent element, but 20% of the browser window. Now let's go to the fifth task. Use inheritance and make the text in both p elements font white. You can use the property responsible for the font color only once in styles. Specify the color value as you like. So as you can see, the font color for our 2 elements is white, and we have to use inheritance so that we specify this font color only once in our styles and not separately for the first div and for the second div. So at this point you probably know how to do this. Let's go to another task. So the sixth task is center first div from right and left, separated 100 pixels away from the top edge of the browser window, and separate it from the second div with the value of 100 pixels as well. Use the margin property for this. So this shouldn't be a problem for you to separate the first div from the top of the browser window and the second div with the margin property, but it might be kind of difficult for you to center this element on our website from the left and the right. You should use margin property for this as well. I showed you before how it's supposed to be done, but I showed it only as a bonus, so you might not catch it up. But take up the challenge and try for yourself. Let's go to another task. The 7th task is create a selector that matches only the first P and then a selector that matches only the second P. Use these selectors to set the font size for the first P to 32 pixels and the second P to 24 pixels, but you cannot use a value specified directly in pixels. You have to use the relative units. So as you can see, our first div has a bigger font size, which is 32 pixels, and our second div has a smaller font size, which is 24 pixels, but we can't use straight pixels units to set it. So we have to use relative units, such as M units, rem units, or percentages, and we have to figure it out if then our browser will compute it strictly to 32 pixels in the case of the first div and 24 pixels in the case of the second div. Now the last 8th task, use inheritance and with the font family property set all elements font to Arial. Use the main document selector for that. So as you can see at our project, this is not Times New Roman font. It was changed to Arial, but we can't set it separately for the first and the second div, but we have to use the inheritance and set this font in the main document selector. If you know HTML structure, you should probably know that there's one main selector for all our document, which includes all other selectors inside it. In any words, we have a main tag where all the tags are inside. So basically, this should be it. I will show you in a minute how it's supposed to be done, or how I would do this, because you may come up with a different way of doing it. But if the effect will be the same or nearly the same, it will be fine as well, as long as you will do this according to our to-do list. Because in developing and programming, many ways can lead to the same effect. Do what you can and don't worry if you're not able to do all the tasks. It's not the most important right now. Some of these tasks are really difficult, and I will repeat these topics through this course so you will catch up with it, even if now it might still be difficult for you. So now please pause the video, try to do this assignment by yourself, and I'll be back with my answer in a second. Now I will show you how I would do this assignment. Let's go to the first task, create an index.html file and the document structure in it. The document has to be in English and has to be entitled Day 7-8 assignment. Create a style tag in head to include the styles. Now I have another Visual Studio Code open and I will start making this assignment. First thing, create a new file. Index.html, creating a structure with the emmet shortcut. I will decrease those indents to have more space, like this. We can see our language is English by default. Now we have to change the title. So the best way to do it is to copy it from here and placing it in our document like this. Now what we have to do is to create a style tag to place our styles in it. So the first task is completed. Let's save our file. Let's open it with the live server. I splitted the screen with my Visual Studio Code and my project preview just so we could see the effect of our work. Let's take a look at the second task. Place 2 div elements in your document, each with a p element inside with some sample text. Could be lorem ipsum. Give each of the divs a separate class with any name. Remember that the class name cannot stop with a digit. Use the image shortcuts for this. Alright, let's do it. Let's go to our body tag. And now even if you place div and press enter, you use the image shortcut. So this part of the task is completed. Then you could press P and press enter. Save our file. Also you could place lorem and press enter. This is also image shortcut. Then we have a text inside our p tag. And what you could do next is to place class attribute and the name of the class. Since this div will have a red background, we can call it red. Save the file. And we can see the effect right on our monitor. But you could also do it like this, that we want to have a div with the class of blue, and inside it we want to have a p tag. Then all we need to do is place enter, and voila, we have a ready div element with the class of blue and a p tag inside it. Now we can place lorem as well, press enter, save the file, and we have our 2 p tags in our document. So the second task is done. Let's go to the third one. Set the first div's background color to red and the second div's to blue using an RGB based value for red and a hexadecimal value for blue. So let's do this. Let's go to our style tag. Let's refer to our first div. Referring by the class would be the simplest. So all we need to do is place a dot and the name red. And what we want to set is the background color. The shortcut is BGC. But it was not required in this assignment. And we have to use an RGB function. So let's do it. Let's delete these dummy values for now. And what we want to do right now, this color should be red. So as we know in the RGB functions, we have 3 values for the red color, for the green color, and for the blue color. And as we know, if the red color will glow at its full power and the other colors will not glow at all, our color will be red. So what we want to do is to place 255 for the red color, 0 for the green color, and 0 for the blue color. We can see the preview of our color, and now when we save our file, we will see the effect in our browser. Now let's refer to our second div, which has a class of blue. We want to set its background color as well, but now we will use the hex number. So it's the same situation as with the RGB function. We have 2 characters for the first color, which is red, and we know we want to not glow at all. The second 2 characters are responsible for the green color, which we don't want to glow at all as well. So we place another 2 zeros. And we want our blue color to glow at its full power. So we want to place double F, which is the highest value in a hexadecimal system. Let's save our file. And voila, we have the effect in our browser. If we have double characters in all of our colors, we can simplify it by typing only one of them for one color, and the effect will be the same, as you can see. Now let's go to the next task. Now the fourth one, make the first div 50% of the width of the browser window and the second div 20% of the height of the browser window. So let's do it. Let's go to our first div and we want to set its width. And if you placed 50% like this, you can score this part of the task, but you should know that this way you place the 50% of the parent element, which is in this case the body, so we can assume it's more or less the browser window without those margins. But you should use another unit, which is the viewport width. And this way you get the legit 50% of the browser window, no matter how big or small would the parent element be. Now the second one, which is the blue, and in this case we were supposed to set its height. And as with the first example, 50% would work. In this case, 20% would have no effect, because as we know, this div, as all divs and block elements in HTML by default, has no set height as its parent element. So these 20% are referring to nothing, because as we know, block elements have 100% of the width by default, but auto height, which is not specified by any strict number. So in this case, if we want this property to work, we have to use the viewport unit, and in this case it should be 20% of the browser window's height. So the unit is VH, which is the viewport height. Now let's save our file and see the effect, and we can see it in our browser with no problem. Now let's go to the next task. The fifth one, use inheritance and make the text in both P elements font white. You can use the property responsible for the font color only once in styles. Specify the color value as you like. So let's go to our project. What we have to do is to set the font color for all our elements to white, but we can use this property only once. So we have to use the inheritance to make it happen. The simplest way for me is to refer to our body tag, use the color property, set it to white, and save our file. And voila. As you can guess, all our elements inside our body inherited this font color from our body tag. Let's see what's the next task. Task number 6. Center first div from right and left, separated 100 pixels away from the top edge of the browser window, and separated from the second div with the value of 100 pixels as well. Use the margin property for this. Alright, let's refer once again to our first div, and let's set its margin property. As we know, we can use 4 values for that. The first one is margin top, the second one is margin right, the third one is margin bottom, and the fourth one is margin left. So first, the simple thing, we want 100 pixels to be separated from the top of the browser window. So 100 pixels from the top, as well as from the bottom, like this. So this part is succeeded. Now the hard part, which you might not remember. We have a value which is called auto, And if you set it to the right or left in our margin property, it will take all the free space at this side. This is now at the right side, so it wouldn't do much. But if we place it at the left side, for example, it will do something like this with our element, because at the left side, the margin will be the whole free space on this side. And if we place the auto value at the left and at the right side of our element will be centered from the left and the right. And since our top and bottom value is the same, and our left and right value is the same, as we can see, we can shorten this notation only to 100 pixels auto, so it will refer to margin top and margin bottom for 100 pixels, and auto for margin left and margin right. Let's save it, and the effect is the same. Now our first element is centered from left and the right, and separated with the 100 pixels margin from the top edge of the browser window and the second element. Now let's check another task. The seventh one, create a selector that matches only the first P, and then a selector that matches only the second P. Use these selectors to set the font size for the first P to 32 pixels and the second P to 24 pixels, but you cannot use a value specified directly in pixels. You have to use the relative units. So let's do this. I would do this like this. You might come up with a different plan. If the effect would be as we wanted, there's no problem. But the first thing that come up to my head is to use selector like this. Red P, which we would read, take the P tag, which is inside any element with the class of red. As we can see, we have only one P tag that is inside of an element with the class of red. So this would specify only to our first P. It's the same situation with the second one. Then we say take a P tag, which is inside any element with the class of blue. And as we can see in our HTML, we have only one P tag, which is inside a div, but it could be any element with the class of blue. Now we have to set the font size of the first element to 32 pixels, but we can't use the pixels unit. But as we know, the default value of the font size for the HTML element is 16 pixels. So we can refer to it. 16 times 2 would be 32 pixels. So we can use 2m, or rem in this example would be exactly the same, because the 16 pixels font size would be inherited by all elements, so we can refer strictly to the HTML element or to our parent element, which has the same font size. So let's place m in this example. Let's save our file. We can see the effect in our browser. Now let's go to the second one. Let's refer to the font size, and we want to have it 24 pixels. Now let's refer to the main HTML element. So we are going to use the rem unit, and all we have to do is to multiply the value of the HTML font size by 1.5. 1.5 rem. In this case, m would do the same effect, because those 16 pixels from the HTML element would be inherited to all the other elements, but we use the m unit in the first one, so let's use rem unit in the second one. Because 16 times 1.5 equals 24. Let's save it. We can see the effect in the browser. Let's check it out in our DevTools. Let's mark the first element. Go to Computed tab, scroll a little bit down, and we can see the font size is 32 pixels. Let's mark the second one, and its font size is 24 pixels. And that's just how it's supposed to be done. Let's check the last task of our assignment, the 8th task, which is use inheritance, and with the font family property set all the elements font to Arial. Use the main document selector for that. So let's do this. When I was talking about the main selector, I was talking about the HTML structure, because if we hide our style and hide our body, we can clearly see that everything in our structure is nested inside this main HTML tag. So the HTML is our main selector, and we can refer to it in our style tag. And if we set our font family to Arial, every element will inherit this font if it haven't set its own font set manually. Let's save our file, and this would be the effect. Our assignment is done. As I said, there are many ways to achieve this effect. So if you did something differently, but according to our to-do list, and get the correct result, you achieved your goal. Now I would like to do a small summary of your work. If you succeeded with 4 tasks or more, it's awesome. You're on a good way. Keep that up and don't slow down. If you scored 4 tasks, it's really okay. You're on a good way, but try to be focused more. As I said, I will repeat many of these topics so you can catch up with it easily. Now, if you did 2 or 3 tasks in this assignment, it's not bad. You worked with me through these sections, but now you have to focus more during the upcoming sections, because these are your skills, and believe me, it's in your interest to improve them. Don't torment yourself. You are also able to catch up, but keep in mind that you have to put some more work into it. But if you didn't do any task or did only one of them, you have to repeat the material. You have to take your time to focus more once again. And trust me, don't go any further at this stage, because you won't learn anything new and the knowledge gap will be even bigger. But for now, thank you for participating so far, and see you in the next section.